Hey, welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. Thanks for being here. How's it going? Are you enjoying the show? I hope so. If you have enjoyed the shows, I'd love it if you went to iTunes and put down a good review. That's going to help to spread the word so that other people can enjoy it as much as you have been. If you haven't been enjoying it, well, thanks for listening and giving this episode a try. And wait until you like it before you give it a review. I'm going to be doing a giveaway for the reviews. So if you've left a review, I'm going to have a raffle. I'll give you a shout out, and I'm going to send out copies of my book. We're going to send out some oil. So I want to shower the love back on you guys if you're leaving reviews and saying nice things. So thank you as always for the support. Today's episode is tremendous. I'm joined by Dawn Oliver. She is the woman who helped me and Jen to organize our yoga wellness retreat that we did a couple years ago. We talk a lot about the retreat business and how to get into it, what some of the pitfalls are if you're a yogi, and then also just, like normal stuff that we talk about here, life and being present and all of the things. So I was super, super happy to have her on the show. I actually knew her before I ever met Jen, and Jen used to work for her and her husband, Mark, before or when Jen and I met. So lots of ties there, and I'm happy to hear about all of the things that she's doing, bridging her experiences between yoga and wellness with the travel industry. Really, really remarkable stuff. So thank you as always for listening. You can check out my work at Inviting in Love. You can follow me on Instagram at James E. Rohr, and you can follow Dawn on Instagram at Xplored. That's WELLXPLORED. And you can check them out at wellexplored.com. So without any further ado, let's welcome Dawn to the show. And we're live. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, Jim.
You got your tea?
I've got tea and green juice and throat lozenges.
Good. I appreciate you pushing through that sore throat. And did you know that there was a study done about giving people warm beverages, that they had participants hold like a warm cup of mug and then meet a stranger, and they had people hold like an iced tea or like an iced beverage and then meet a stranger, and statistically significantly people rated having like more, that the person that they met was friendlier and more likable
with the warm
when
beverage.
They had the warm beverage.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, I always love, especially in the morning, a warm, creamy beverage. And it's always like with an almond milk or an oat milk or something like that. And it's not really always about the coffee, but it's about that warm, creamy beverage. I can't give that up.
Uh-huh. Let's talk about retreat business. Let's talk about retreat life, because you were instrumental in Jen and I leading our first retreat. And we've been getting emails from people asking us if we're going to do one again. And we look at each other and we're like, well, we got to talk to Dawn. Where's Dawn going to take us?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's funny because my whole evolution within retreats and yoga and wellness has been so cool. I was always in the travel industry. So that was from the beginning, from out of college. So back in like 2003. And then we started a yoga company and then transitioned into yoga and wellness travel. So it's just been so amazing and organic. But what we did together this was in 2016 when we went to McCool for the first time.
Oh,
so I actually just saw some photos on my phone on the shared album we had.
Yeah.
And it happened kind of by accident in a way, I like to say, that first FAM trip. And what we call a FAM trip is a familiarization trip. So kind of travel industry lingo. It stands for familiarization trip, and it's intended to bring not really just retreat leaders, because this is within media or travel agents is historically what we would do in the travel industry, and host travel agent FAM trips. So when we went to McCool in 2016, a friend of mine who was running the property knew that I was in touch with yoga and wellness people, and we had built a business around yoga. And he just said, well, can you bring me some like retreat leaders? Like, can we do some retreats? I'm like, well, that's easy. Like, yeah, these are my friends. We can come down. And of course, Mark wanted to go surfing.
Right.
So that was really like driven through Mark wanting to surf. And then, okay, so let's put this together. So that was the first wellness fam trip that I hosted. Awesome. And we had 4 retreats that confirmed after that. Mm-hmm. And then there were 2 others. Sadly, we had to cancel because McCool had to close down.
Right.
But it would have been 6 then.
Yeah.
Within just bringing a handful of retreat leaders to the property. It's really cool.
That place was amazing, and it was perfect for like all the things that I love to do, which is to play golf, surf, be fit, be on the beach,
Yeah.
have great food, and like enjoy an amazing spa experience.
Yeah.
And it's been hard to get super motivated to think about going to another retreat because we loved that place so much.
Everybody. So if you're not familiar with McCool, it is still located in Nicaragua. It's along the Emerald Coast, but it's a amazing, epic 5-star resort with like 30 bohíos and just this exceptional service and spa and yoga space and food and just everything so amazing. But sadly they closed. I guess it was maybe 2018. Hopefully they'll reopen because
of some of the political stuff that's happening.
Some
in
of the
country.
political stuff, yeah. So I had a retreat that was running like the week that everything hit the news, and it was like, don't travel here. I had to cancel that one, and then I had to cancel one other in November. So that kind of stuff, it's like when I was opening hotels after graduating from college, it's like if you're not ready to open the hotel and you have to cancel business, or if you're like have things on the books and you have to cancel them, there's nothing worse than that because of, environmental factors or political factors. I've had to do it with hurricanes, so I've had to do it a few times, but that's the least enjoyable part of my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love where you're positioning yourself, because I've known and worked with yogis who they want to get into retreats, right? It's super popular right now and they get really excited about it. I remember this one yogi that I was treating in New York, and she was talking about how she was leading a retreat to Tulum. And I was like, well, what's that experience like for you? And she starts breaking down about how she was like coordinating their booking. She had to like arrange the transfers. She was negotiating with the hotels. She was like trying to hire a chef, and then the chef fell through. So then they were going to do all the cooking. And I was like, oh my God, you're doing everything except teaching yoga.
Yeah. I've heard of retreat leaders having to like clean up like rooms or something. Like,
No
wait
way.
a minute. No. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard the worst of the worst from teachers before we've worked together. They kind of share with me, what the challenges are and what the experience has been. And I did hear that once. I was like, wait a minute. No. You need to be holding space for people.
Right.
How do you hold space for people if you're worried about anything external? If you're worried about the service not happening, or if you're worried about, that you have to clean somebody's room, or get towels or anything that takes you away from holding sacred space for somebody else. It's not possible, I don't think. And people feel that.
Well, and it's like there are experts in the travel industry where this is all they do.
Yeah.
Is like figure out the deals and the transfers and like the hotels and the best way to do it and optimize the stay, and like that's a whole separate industry.
Yeah.
And not many people are, trained, like not many people who are leading yoga retreats are trained or have experience or even know what to ask for from the hotel.
It's so interesting because I am, my whole focus is on hotels, and it really always has been, even before I started Xplored, because I was working with hotels. And so every single day I'm negotiating with hotels, and I'm coordinating, scouring out certain markets, looking for the right properties that are a good fit for retreats. So what happens then is, if you and Jen are hosting a retreat, chances are, or ideally, I've worked with that property before. So I already have done a ton of work to create a retreat experience, and then you're going to benefit from that. And have and be able to take advantage of that. Whereas if you're a one retreat leader or 2 retreat leaders, and you have to go through that whole process, it's intense.
I mean, I've told Jen, I've just said, I was like, I'm not doing any retreat unless Dawn gives it the thumbs up. I was like, I don't even want to mess with it. Like, I know what my zone of genius is. It's like, we know what your zone of genius is. And we also know that like, we could make something work. Yeah. We could possibly do it. Yeah. But it's not worth the stress, the agony, the possibility of booking a place that isn't like on that somehow lets us down.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know that if you're saying that, hey, this is the place, and if Well Explored is involved in
Yeah.
helping all of that, that it's going to be top notch, and that we're free to provide great service to our guests and clients.
Yeah. I see when I work with especially seasoned retreat leaders, and what I really kind of classify as a seasoned retreat leader, they have been hosting retreats for years and years and years before it became popular.
Yeah.
So they know how it rolls. That relationship actually even works the best, because they're like, wait, you do all the logistics, you do all the site, help me with the site selection, you collect the money, you do the bookings. All I have to do is show up and get paid, and we work out what they're going to get paid.
Right.
And it's like a win-win. They're like, great, I don't have to do any of that. And I think yoga teachers and healers and professional development coaches, everyone that's in the space of helping another person with like a personal development or alternative healing, this is such a unique talent. That is what you're really good at.
Right.
Just the same way as typically in your business, if you're in the business of yoga, maybe you're not in the business of accounting. Like maybe you really suck at that.
Right.
And then you have somebody else that does that for you. It's really hard to do everything and to manage all moving parts.
Mm-hmm. There's huge value in asking for help. I mean, this is something that Jen and I talk a lot about. She got me an awesome golf lesson last week. This guy that I've been following on Instagram, and he's like, it's amazing. And she got it for me for my birthday, and we went, and I was like, it was interesting because I've been doing so much coaching. It was great to be a student, and it was great to be like, okay, there's like a void in what I'm able to understand about like my golf swing. And I'm so excited to get some professional help who's going to be able to steer me in the right direction and make sure that I succeed.
Yeah.
And to have at least for as far as like reaching out to somebody like you or other experts, where it's like, or even an accountant or somebody, where it's like, I might be able to figure it out, but this is going to streamline everything, and then it frees up my energy to do what I do best.
To do everything else,
It's great. That requires a certain amount of humility to just be like, okay, I'm not going to do everything myself. I'm going to allow myself to, reach out for help, and then to receive that kind of support is really, it's tremendous.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us, especially a lot of us yogis, myself included, type A yogis, we feel like we need to do everything. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that reflects in the household with raising children. Often it's not your partner that isn't contributing. They are contributing a ton and they want to do a ton, but you just want to control everything. And it's the same in business. So I think that I'm constantly learning that lesson about being able to delegate and hand things off to other people who are more capable. And I think that's kind of the whole premise with managing retreats. If you can know and trust somebody who has been to the destination, who has a relationship with the property, who can do all those details for you, then that frees you up for a whole lot of creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tremendous. So we went to, Jen and I were a couple years ago, we went to a place in Scotland, Allendale.
Yes.
Right?
So I'm hosting a fam trip there.
And this is like, I guess Jen met him because Jen used to work for you guys at Yogiza, right? And then he came to one of your yoga classes there or something, where she met Paul.
Yeah, so Paul Lister is the owner of Allendale, and he's a longtime friend. I think now I've known him for like about 11 years. But he is truly this passionate, incredible conservationist. So he's like a magnet. When you meet him, you're like, holy cow, that energy. But usually, and I think Jen just really, him and her connected, and she was teaching him private yoga, and then he invited you guys to come out to Allendale. So Allendale is located in the northern part of Scotland, the Scottish Highlands, and it's 23,000 acres of a wilderness reserve. Mm-hmm. And Paul has this vision of rewilding the Highlands of Scotland. So he actually wants to bring back the the wolves, which is super controversial.
Right.
But they've planted nearly 1 million trees. They're bringing back, the natural indigenous fauna and animals. So it's all really about the nature and the conservation there. But what was your experience there? Because you were there more closely. I was there like 9 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we were
time
there, I think it was 2 years ago we went, and it was awesome. It was so great. I'd never been to Scotland before, and what he's done on that property is tremendous. Planting all of the trees and, trying to restore it, not trying, he's doing it, restoring it to the natural habitat. We ate super well because they're culling the deer on the property.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you're eating all the fresh meat that's like freshly hunted, and it's like the food was delicious. And one of the things that I found so fascinating is that, so in Scotland, they have this law it's called the right to roam. And so every person in Scotland can hike anywhere they want. Mm-hmm. So there's no such thing as
Boundaries.
Enclosed private property.
No fences.
There's fences, but they all have gates that have to be unlocked. So you have to, any people have to be able to roam wherever they want.
Come into my backyard.
Basically. And so that's part of the resistance is Paul wants to repopulate with the wolves.
With the wolves, and that's why they don't want
he's
him
got
to.
to close the fences. And so the hikers, and there's a small population that like is not okay with that. So that's like resistance number one. And the second one is they said that he has to get licensed as a zoo.
As a zoo, I know.
And he was like, why? It's not a zoo.
Yeah.
And they were like, you have animals in an enclosed area. And he's like, the wolves are going to be enclosed in like 40,000 acres or something.
Yeah. Well, and the point is that in Scotland and that part of the world, it used to be a very lush forest, and there were wolves, and they managed the deer, and there were all of these different animals. So it's just the ecosystem has completely drastically changed over the now thousands of years, but due to uplifting most of the trees.
Right.
There's a lot more barren landscape there now.
He was so funny. He's a really eccentric guy. And as we were driving around, he was showing us around. He goes, just look at it all. It's sheep wrecked here. Because all the sheep have got, for the sheep, they've gotten rid of the trees. And so it's just like pasture. And we're like, look how pretty. It's so pasture. And he's like, it's all sheep wrecked.
Oh my God. So funny. But these fam trips are super great because it gives retreat leaders the opportunity to experience a property before they decide to bring a group there, so they can really determine if it's a good fit, see the yoga space, understand what that's like, know what the food experience is like, and then also be able to take that experience back and share it with their students to really sell it. How do you sell something that you haven't been to? I have a really hard time doing it.
Yeah,
I stumble. I'm like, I don't know. How far is the airport?
I hear it's going to be great. Yeah. Yeah, and so with that place, it was, it's so pretty, but it's like, it's a trek to get to from
the airport,
from here,
from
Miami to get over there. And I think that for folks who have already a set up population in Europe, and especially in the UK, it's a total no brainer. I mean, it's so easy. Yeah. Or if someone's got, if they've been in the retreat game for a while, where they've got a seasoned client base who's used to traveling to adventurous places, it could be really great. I mean, it's so pretty. He's got this there's a detached hut, like home that's set up there. Cottage that's set up for the yoga with views that look down the valley. I mean, it's so pretty.
Yeah. Well, so out of 7 spots that I have with this fam trip, I have so far 5 that are coming from London.
Perfect.
One that's coming from the US, but she has a large group of following in Dublin and the UK. And so she's looking for something on training on that part of the world. But for sure, because even when you and Jen originally came back, and I think Jen was talking about retreats there, and I'm thinking, it's kind of hard sell for the US market. Right. Some teachers have that market that, even based here in the US, and it's easier for them to sell something that's really sort of exotic or, undiscovered like Scotland. But I think other teachers have a harder time with that.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you look for? Who do you look for when you're booking out your fam trips?
Mostly it's all through referral. It certainly is. Because when you tell me about a great retreat leader, or Jen tells me, and so on and so on, those are the ones that I keep most highly regarded, of course.
Right.
But I have a fam trip application form that I have everyone complete that just really goes through to try to extract from every single retreat leader, what is your vision for your ideal retreat? What are your destinations that you're most excited about?
Right.
What is non-negotiables? What is most important? Do you need rooms with 2 beds? Sometimes you're focused more on couples, or you have the clientele that wants only singles, so king beds are okay. So there's all of this kind of questionnaire just to extract what are you looking for, and then how can I match you to the right property. And that's constantly what I'm doing. So I'm looking at that database, everyone who's completing that, and where do they want to go, and then we'll usually have a long conversation about their ideal dream retreat, and then if it's a good fit, it's a good fit, and we come together. There's never any requirements that you have to bring a group back, so it's never part of it, but they are complimentary trips.
Sure.
So they're complimentary trips, so I don't take it lightly. It's you can't just invite anybody who you really don't know. So I do like to have that frame of reference. But then if anybody that I don't know wants to be considered, they can complete the form. We can have some calls just to try to understand what you've done before and how I can be of assistance.
Awesome. And so you're open to people who maybe have never done a retreat before? I
am. I think that there's a large learning curve there for new retreat leaders, but there's so much talent, and I just ask a lot of the right questions, I think, to help give them the confidence and understand, do they have the clientele to sell it to?
Right.
Because still, regardless, I'll book, several retreats with people through my network, but 90% at least is always coming through that retreat leader.
Right.
So if you don't have your own solid following, if you're not communicating with an audience on a regular basis, it's going to be a whole lot harder for you to book out a retreat.
And also, who is your audience currently? It's like we were at McCool, like a 5-star resort. Like if someone's used to only having, like in the acupuncture, we would call it a sliding scale, but if it's kind of a donation only practice and they're catering to a particular demographic, they may not be a great fit for a place that's like $400 or $500 a night.
Yeah. And I specialize more on the higher end, definitely on the luxury side, because that's been my experience when I was on the hotel side within the travel industry. And then sometimes within the middle market, but never on the low end.
Right.
It's just, I think maybe there's too much going on there, and I can't be confident on service levels, and it's just too stressful. It's so.
Well, it kind of defeats the purpose of like a retreat too. If you're doing if it's a true retreat, part of it is like you want to create an environment where this person can have like a breakthrough. And if it's like there's cockroaches, or if they're like stressed or whatever, it's like that's not going to work.
Yeah,
it's got to be. I think it's got to be. You have to set people up to thrive. And when you're not concerned about the hotel and the amenities and the service and all of that stuff, then us as retreat leaders can really set it up where people can have those kind of breakthroughs, where they can have that feeling of comfort and being supported.
Yeah. Well, how was it for you when you came to McCool on a fam trip? And then, so was the experience that you were really inspired to bring a group back, or what was that experience like for you, it being introduced to a property that you probably had no idea about before?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever been on a trip like that before. So my first thought was like, whoa, like these hotels, like this is legit. They do invest in getting people getting the exposure, and the way that they treated us, and from, the GMs that we met all the way down to the busboy and the servers, everyone was so polite and so professional and caring. And there was such a warmth. And I guess this is Nicaraguan people as a whole, but there's just there's so much warmth there that it's how do we not come back here?
Yeah.
It's we have to. I mean, it's I'm so disappointed that they're closed, 'cause
I know.
It's
When it feels good to be a VIP guest.
Yeah.
Anytime. anytime we're hosting these fam trips, I mean, you're automatically flagged because you're a guest of the hotel. The hotel, as you said, is investing in that trip. And you're a guest of the hotel, so they want to roll out every single red carpet and showcase the best of the destination, showcase, what they're really able to do so that you are inspired, that you go back and you have no other takeaway other than I need to showcase this. I need to bring people back.
Yeah. And it was great. I mean, it was just like, yeah, hey, we want so I would do Qigong. I did Qigong on the beach in the morning in our retreat. And then we had a nice little walk along the beach up to the Palapa or to the, like kind of space. Like treetop yoga platform. And we were like, yeah, we'd love to have smoothies for all of our people. Like when we finish the Qigong, and then they'll just, walk along the beach with their morning smoothie. So they get a little bit of some nutrition before they do the yoga. And the hotel was like, yeah, perfect. No problem.
Yeah.
We had these fresh smoothies, and then they had somebody else at the end of the beach at the base going up to the yoga platform to collect the cups. And then she had cool towels so we could like kind of wipe ourselves off before we
Yeah.
it was just amazing.
Cool.
And it's like,
service.
Okay, great. Like as long as as long as we're doing great with the yoga and the acupuncture and the Qigong, like it's going to be great.
Yeah. I was at a property recently in Costa Rica, and we were going down to a waterfall hike. And it wasn't like a strenuous hike or anything, but we were walking down. Then there was actual like real stairs kind of to walk all the way down to where the waterfall was. And they had gone ahead of time and sprinkled all different color rose petals. And they had these towels rolled up, like 3 different color towels within that like same rose petal like pattern. And they had the towels rolled up and all the rose petals. And it was just like, wow, just tiny little details. And when you're working with really incredible properties that are on the luxury side, and it doesn't have to kill the bank. It doesn't have to break the bank.
Right.
But when you're really working with the best properties, you have these little details that you would never expect.
Yeah. I did when I came down here, I met you here in Miami. I was working at Canyon Ranch, and that was like I came from a hospital to Canyon Ranch, and that was my first exposure to like the hospitality world. And it just like blew my mind. Like coming from the hospital system where like nobody gets fired. Like people might be transferred, but like you rarely would hear about anybody getting fired. And then down
well, hotels, they switch. Hoteliers move around quite a lot. It's hard to keep up with them. It's like every year, every 2 years. But the same part in the hotel industry, it's so funny because within especially the luxury hotel industry, it's really small. And while that like one GM may have been at 10 different hotels, you know him and he's done a great job at all those properties. Typically, they're not even ever fired. Yeah. They've done a great job, and you know him from the beginning to the end, but they move around a lot. They're hard to keep track of.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's like they all know each other. And it's like, I'd be like, oh, like, how do you know that guy? I'm like, oh, I worked with him at this hotel, and then he went over here, and I went here, and then we met up at this other third hotel.
Well, that's how it is. That's how I even started this business, because as a hotelier myself, and of course, there's the group of people, like you said, that you may have worked directly with, but even more so on the sales and marketing side. When you're traveling to either just to New York, you're doing road shows, or you're traveling with like leading hotels of the world I worked a lot with, or to conferences. All the hoteliers are your colleagues. Like they're your friends. Like you're out partying with them. So then when they're managing a 5-star resort in the Caribbean, you're like, well, we're friends. Let's do a retreat together. They're like, great. Yeah. So it's like really easy then for me to do that negotiation, because I typically already have relationships with these people. Or then they know what I'm up to, and they're like, okay, well, how can we work together? So I'm negotiating better rates than what people will get going direct. And then the hotels are giving me a commission. So it really doesn't impact the retreat leader. Yeah. They're not having to then share margins with another person, which I think, typically they get more nervous about.
The fear, for sure. Yeah. And in fact, it's like, I mean, it's win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was that transition like for you going from the hotel world into like the entrepreneurial stuff with Yogiza?
Yeah. So interesting. This was now back in 2009. And initially I had gotten really burnt out from traveling. So I was just in kind of a place within the hotel space and hotel world where I was traveling way too much. I was a director of sales and marketing for a property in the Caribbean and in Turks and Caicos. And we were looking at the next year's travel schedule, and I had just gotten really sick that year too. And I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And that year I was being introduced to yoga too. So, and that was the year that I met Mark, my husband, who we started Yogisa together. So it all just kind of happened within the time frame where I needed a break. I just needed to be grounded. I needed to be home for a little while.
Yeah.
So I quit. And I quit, and you would think it could have been like the worst time ever. And it wasn't really quick because I gave like 3 months notice. I did like a huge transition. I'm really make sure everything is left in the right places. But essentially I quit because I didn't go to another hotel.
Yeah.
And that was the end of 2000. Was it 2009? It was 2009. It was a funny time in the economy.
Sure.
So people were like, really? What are you doing? You have a really good job and you're just quitting. So I did like a little bit of consulting. So I just went from working. I felt like I went from working like 80 hours a week to like 20 hours a week. And I was grounded. I started working on myself a little bit more. And within that space, that was when Mark really was the vision behind Yogisa. He was starting to put this business together. And I happened to have a lot of time. I didn't know what to do with because I was just working a lot less. I was working like part-time then. So I started helping him put the pieces together because I come more from a business background. This was my first entry into the yoga and wellness space too. And I think for me, to specifically answer your question about that transition, I think it was a little hard for me. It was like a bit of an identity crisis. And it didn't happen right away. At first, it was great not to be, running around like a boomerang everywhere.
Right.
And then it kind of hit I built my whole career in hotels and travel. And this yoga and wellness stuff is all new for me. And I also felt like, I remember I shared this with Mark a few times. I felt like within the yoga and wellness space, there wasn't that sense of community. And we had actually built a ton of community within Yogisa in Miami Beach at the kind of highlight of that. But I felt like it was lacking, like where in the travel industry, I can go on a road show or I can go to a conference and I knew people from Italy, from Morocco, from Paris, from California, from New York, from the Caribbean. They were from all over the world, but we knew each other.
Yeah.
And we came together, and we came together often at the same things several times a year. So there felt like there was this community within the luxury travel space that I thought was missing within yoga. And maybe it's changed a little. I mean, social media is kind of, a lot of the community has transitioned into the social media world.
Right.
So that, I mean, it's community for sure, and people are sharing stuff, but it's a whole lot different community digitally than community and sharing emotions and hugs and
What have you found to be some of the biggest business obstacles for yogis? Because you've interacted with them both, from like, the organic clothing movement to, now helping them to run retreats. So you're kind of, you have a lot of different touch points with them.
Yeah. I mean, managing time and self-expectations, because you may want to do everything and you have visions of creating. I mean, some yogis want to create a clothing brand. They want to, go and run a retreat. They want to be an ambassador for a juice company. I mean, all of these different things. And it's amazing because it's all within the wellness lifestyle space. But you have to know, I think, when to bring in people to help you with all of that, because it's impossible to do everything. And I think that just is with any business. But I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen with even really successful yogis. And then I think with maybe just any new retreat leader or, person that's looking to get into that space, I think sometimes there's a disconnect where they don't understand their own audience. They don't really know what their client wants. We talk about price points. For example, every retreat can really be custom created, co-created. So there's not like, this exact equation. We create the package to meet your needs. And sometimes it's not at McCool or it's not at this other property. It's
Right.
there's a property for every person.
everybody, sure.
So rather, I try to extract, what do you think your customer wants to pay for a retreat? Let's start there. I'll make sure you get the profit that you need to get for sure. We're always going to do that. But let's start with understanding, what do you think you can sell? There's a big difference between selling something at $1,600 a person to, $4,000 a person.
Right.
They're really different clients. So understanding who you have and what you're creating, I think, is really important.
And we talk about it a lot with, shifting what I've been learning as I get more into coaching and even with some advertising stuff, is that it's about focusing much more on the outcome that's provided, instead of the
Exactly.
process. Like, I think yogis and all the healers and coaches and stuff, we love our process, right? Because it's like, it's our thing. And we're like, oh, we've got the Roar method, or we've got, this kind of thing, or, this special technique. And I spent all this time learning this technique, and
Yes.
the technique, people don't give a shit about the technique.
Yeah.
They don't care about that stuff. I mean, some people might, but that's like the fringe. But people really want to know, what's it going to do for me?
Yeah, well, understand what your challenges are, understand what your goal is, and then how do you get there? How do you overcome those challenges? And sometimes it's asking for help. There's a solution for all of those challenges, but if you don't know where you're going,
Right.
you can't actually help alleviate those challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. So how much time do you spend on the road?
That's a good question. More now, but when I really got back into this travel space, I had a newborn. Just so crazy to say. And I had made the agreement that I would travel once a month, maximum once a month. And now that sometimes it is a little bit more, but still I would say probably twice a month is maximum for me. I have to manage the trips and make sure that I make the most out of them. So, for example, in London in November, I work with Condé Nast. So I do freelance work with Condé Nast, and I'm going to a conference with Condé Nast. And then I'm going to host 2 fam trips on the front and the back end. So I'll be gone for longer than I've really ever been gone before, but I'll maximize that time in Europe.
Yeah.
Whereas my maximum away used to be 4 nights away. And then it was 5 nights away because I have a 5-year-old now. So
Right.
it's like you can't spend too much time away. And I really don't think I've done more than 6 nights, 5 or 6 nights now.
And has it been challenging for you to, especially when Robbie was small, to be away?
Oh, yeah. So, oh my God, could end up being a funny story. I don't even know if I should share it. But so my first trip away from Robbie, he was 2 months old.
Wow.
And maybe he was almost 3 months. It was like just shy of his 3 months. And I had gotten a call probably at about 2 months I had this opportunity to take on all this work with Condé Nast. And I'm thinking, well, this is awesome because I had kind of manifested this, like I wanted this 2 years ago, and now here it is. And I don't think I want to give that up. So we spoke about it, and I had to go to London, and he was 2 months old, and I had never even been away from him, not for 5 minutes, like not for anything.
Sure.
So I remember like maybe about a week before I had to go, or 5 days before I had to go, I had to just leave him for like 2 hours
Yeah.
just to see
Sure.
what would happen. And I remember in those 2 hours, I was having like massive anxiety. I'm like, how am I going to go to London
Yeah.
away from a almost 3-month-old?
Right.
And I'm breastfeeding.
Uh-huh.
And this is not something you could totally relate to, Jim, but it was intense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you have a lot of female listeners, so maybe they would appreciate this more than you. But, I went with 3 pumps.
Wow.
3 pumps. I had never even pumped before because I had a baby who breastfed from me. So I fed him all night long. I didn't need to pump. I was with him.
Yeah.
So I brought 3 pumps with me. And thank God I did, because I get there to London and I blew out the fuse on the on the electric like pump thing. And I'm
milk.
like, and then there was this other weird thing that my sister-in-law had recommended or given me. I don't know, it was like something that you could like pump under a shirt on the airplane. It was like with these tubes. It was just super bizarre. And I couldn't really figure that one out. The manual, that was what saved me. And oh my God, this is too much information, especially probably for you, Jim. But that manual pump for 2 years that I breastfed while I traveled, that manual pump is I'd be in the car, like hiding in the car before I would go to a hotel for a visit. And it was just crazy. It was intense.
Your grip strength is through the roof now.
I was super happy. I mean, I was so happy I was able to breastfeed for 2 years, but I was also happy that when I could travel without having to worry about breastfeeding.
Yeah.
And that first trip to London, I brought home, I mean, this massive amount of milk. I can't even, it was like, I don't know, I must have weighed like, I'm 10 pounds. I have no idea. This massive cooler of milk. And in London, in the UK, it's totally different. Like TSA is different, everything's different. So I remember like I'm walking through security, like with all my milk and stuff, like ready to go. And they're like, well, where's the baby? I'm like, well, why would I have all of this milk if the baby was with me? And I've had that question asked a few times. Like they could not understand why I would have all this milk and I didn't have a baby. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't let me carry the milk on.
Oh, no way.
I had to end up, by now, if anybody needs any tips on traveling as a mother, breastfeeding, just send me a direct message or an email. I can give you all the tips. But it's like you learn through trial and error. Sure. I had to like fill up bags of ice. I was like, thought I was going to miss my flight. I filled up bags of ice, at the local little coffee place in the airport. And I had to just stuff everything in a big cooler, Ziploc, and put it underneath the airplane and trust that it was going to make it out, not contaminated and fresh and everything.
Sure.
And actually it worked out because it's really cold on the bottom of the airplane, right. I guess. So it kind of worked out. But yeah, there's a lot of sacrifices that we make, I think, as mothers, just as mothers and working mothers. And then as traveling working mothers, it's a whole nother ballgame.
It's next level.
Yeah.
It's next level. It reminds me of, I had these clients, these acupuncture clients here in Miami who worked in the spa. They were in the spa business and they traveled. They had, I forget the details, but they had spas like all over. And I treated one of the top women who was also a mom. And then I treated like her right-hand person who was also a mom. And they were two of some of the most unhealthy people I've ever treated. Like hair falling out, clear thyroid issues, massive weight gain, the stress of the spa industry that they were in, along with like meeting the demands of like 5-star resorts, along with the travel. It was like, it was just super intense. And I'm thinking about this because of like you leaving the travel industry for a while. And I remember I treated somebody who worked for them. She was like a couple tiers below and she was like in pretty good health. She had some stress. And I remember she said to me, I was like, what's your dream? Like, what do you want? And she was like, well, I hope to have their job one day. And I said, have you looked at them?
Why?
Yeah. I was like, both of them. It's like, it's not just like a one-off thing, like both of them.
Yeah.
I was like, they're so unhealthy.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to tell you what to do, but you might want to take a really close look at that because, to think that like, well, I'm going to be different.
Yeah.
When it's happened to the two of them,
Yeah.
And I never saw her again.
Well, initially, sometimes you open your mouth and you say something that somebody doesn't want to hear.
You and Jen are similar, where it's like, you were just saying that you tell Mark sometimes stuff that Jen has told me, and shit, even my ex-wife told me. She'd just be like, listen, can you just not, like at this particular dinner, at this particular can you just not do what you normally do?
Well, I have to just have that conversation with Mark sometimes. But it's funny because we're such different people and I am, definitely more of a people pleaser and, I like to maintain harmony and not having conflict. And conflict sometimes is just like a dispute or like a debate. And a debate to me sometimes gets me like sweaty. And so, but everybody is different,
Yeah. Have you ever taken the Enneagram test? The personality
No,
profile.
but I think Jen's told me about that.
Yeah, we're geeking out on it.
Okay. Yeah, I need
you
to
should take it.
I need to do that. Well, what do you think from
Well, there's
what
one
you know?
I forget. Well, Jen, we'd have to get Jen in here. She knows all the numbers. There's one that's their kind of their main thing is called the peacemaker. So they just like everything to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And we're pretty convinced that Mark is an 8. And so like the main motivator of an 8 is the challenger. That's what they're called. It's like the
Yes,
challenger.
the challenger.
You know,
Well,
and so they like to like fight against status quo, and they can be great with social justice. I mean, it's like there's a lot of really positives there. I'm high on the 8,
Yeah.
but my main one is a 3, which is like the main motivator for 3s is like to be excellent or like to be outstanding. It's like if I'm going to do something, I want to be really, really good at it.
Yeah, I want to take that. No, I mean Mark is like a fire starter.
Yeah.
So, but he likes, and it's not really to like, it's just to instigate out of he likes the debate. He gets joy in it, and it doesn't have to be, something super controversial or anything like that. It could just be like he wants to have this little debate, but he has strong opinions about things.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you get him and his mother in the same room, it's really hard. And I love them both so dearly, but sometimes I want to tiptoe away and not be part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And that has happened before.
Have you heard that book? Jenny told me about it, called The Lion and the Unicorn. Have you read this book? I think she heard
She
about it.
did
Maybe
tell me
from
about
Yogiza,
it, but
from the
I
Yogiza
didn't.
days.
Yeah, I didn't read it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, so the basic premise of this book is that in relationships, there's a lion and a unicorn. And so the lion is someone who likes to engage in conflict or engage in the hard conversations. They want the answers right away. They want to they want to hammer things out. And the unicorn, at like any sign of conflict, wants to just run away, be left alone. Like the unicorn will oftentimes say, like, why are you yelling at me? Stop yelling at me. And the lion's like, I'm not yelling. I'm just really like, I'm
excited.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Yes, we can tell who's the lion and the unicorn.
Yeah. It happened in my marriage. She used to say all the time, she's like, stop yelling at me. And I'm like, I'm not yelling.
And now I'm yelling.
Yeah, now I'm yelling. But Wyatt was brushing his teeth one day, and he said he's just like Wyatt will just start saying stuff like the most random times. He's pretty quiet, and then all of a sudden he'll just get really talkative. So we're brushing our teeth, and he said, the other day, Mommy told her sister to stop yelling at her, and I just laughed because that's something that I'd heard a lot of. And so I said to Wyatt, I said, so okay, Wyatt, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, was your aunt yelling at your mom?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, she was just talking normal.
Kids are the best. I mean, kids tell you how it is, and if you approach with an open mind, which is hard to do sometimes as a parent, they'll take you back to the place you need to be. They'll remind you that Robbie gets really sensitive if it's any sort of yelling, or if he thinks that I'm upset, or anything like that. He gets really sensitive to that too.
Yeah.
So I have to really kind of manage how I communicate with him, because it's not going to get him to do anything either if I'm upset or emotional about it.
We were watching Frozen one night. Have you seen this movie?
I actually have not. I talked about it recently. I need to see it, I think.
Yeah, I haven't. We watched part of it. It was on TV, so we caught it like halfway. And there's this scene where there's like a bad guy, and like there's like a chase scene, this like monster and whatever, and like Wyatt was totally unfazed. And then there was a scene where like the sister gets angry at the other sister and like zaps her with some kind of energy or ice or something. And Wyatt like just started crying. And he hid under the covers. He didn't want to see it. And he's like so sensitive to that kind of like
that vibration.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when Robbie was a baby, if another child was crying in the room, he would get really upset. Like it was like, just the sensitivity to that, or loud sounds. I mean, a lot of babies might be sensitive to loud sounds, but it always just felt like it was so audio, and I think that, as we grow up, sometimes we lose our sensitivities to things just from the world around us. It's amazing.
Which, to bring it back to retreats, I mean, I think that's a huge part of the huge value of the retreat stuff. I mean, is this idea of pattern interruption. We talk about it with the oils. I talk about it all the time. Because it's like, we start looping, right? People get stuck in these loops and these habits and these rhythms that just aren't that healthy. And the oils are great at like a moment-to-moment level to interrupt that pattern. and to just be like, okay, I'm looping. I'm having anxious thoughts. I'm overthinking about this, or like I'm in a perpetual state of digestive distress, and it's like, we've got oils for all of that. But the beauty of retreats is it's like, that's a massive pattern interruption, because you're taking people away from their day-to-day, from their habit and the routine. And there's that opportunity to introduce them to a new experience, right? To like really lay the foundation for, a new way of being, or a new connection to themselves, to to increase that sensitivity again, to come back to that, maybe more natural state.
Well, because habits can be so unconscious,
Right.
and not all habits are good habits. And I think that if you are connecting on a retreat, ideally you're connecting with like-minded people. And then, yes, you're breaking your patterns from at home. So maybe you're waking up with the sunrise, and maybe that's like super bizarre for you.
Right.
But maybe you're practicing yoga twice a day, and that's super bizarre for you too. So there's these things, and ideally you can have a bit of that imprint come with you home.
That's the idea.
And then you go back again a couple of months later if you've lost it.
Well, thank you so much, Dawn, for coming on. Let the people know, how can they find you and get in touch with you and all this stuff.
So I'm on social media, on Instagram, Well Xplored, and that's Well Xplored with just an X, WELLXPLORED. So then there's no E. Also, Dawn at wellexplored.com or wellexplored.com. I can be found there.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks so much. This is awesome.
Thanks for coming on. You persevered with the tea and the cough drops. It was awesome. You did great. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. Please, if you like the show, go to iTunes and give us a review. That's super helpful to help other people get the word out there. If you know of any yogis, especially if you're like, oh, I wish my yoga teacher would do a retreat, please send them this email, send them Dawn's contact info, or send them this podcast, send them Dawn's contact information, so that they don't have to do it alone, and Dawn can make it super easy for them. So thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much.